I started recording another reading, but halfway through, Spirit was like, nope, scrap this. Something is much more important and it needs to go out today. So basically, I stopped in the middle of what I was doing and shifted, and here we are, re-recording. If you're not my regular viewer and you're maybe just casually here out of curiosity or something inside of you felt compelled to click, this is mainly a message for you, although my usual collective and listeners can definitely benefit from this as well. For those who aren't my regular listeners, if you clicked on this, there is a very, very important reason, and I hope that you stick through this message to hear it. As a whole, my messages can be pretty uncomfy, pretty disruptive, occasionally annoying, whatever. So I typically take on a lot of heat for saying things that people don't want to hear. This will be that type of message. A lot of you definitely won't want to hear this. You'll want to make excuses, but the real trigger of this message will point at the readings that you consume each day and the readers or messengers that you consume it with and that you have a personal relationship with at this point. It's going to directly point at your habits and your intuition, so you need to be warned right off the bat that you might experience some discomfort. You might feel your discernment or judgment is being questioned, is being dismantled. And so in some way, with what's revealed today, there might be discomfort. As for who this message is for, it is for those who keep being told by readers to remain patient and to trust that something big is coming and shifting, but it hasn't yet formed. This is your message. To unpack this, we need to start with what makes a reader or a messenger self-interested and how to know if a reading is not for your highest good at this time. Again, one last time, this might be hard to hear. You might feel defensive. You might want to defend the readers that you've listened to. Remember, you've maintained a relationship over years. If you're listening to this, this could very much challenge you. I encourage you to stay open and receive this only for your best interest alone and no one else's. So number one, if a reader is acting in self-interest, they replace agency with anticipation. And what that looks like is the reader will keep saying things like, it's almost here, something big is coming, you're on the verge of something. They're basically setting up the stage to keep anticipation for something. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be love, it could be money, it could be a future, whatever they're talking about, it could be anything really. But what's important here is because this anticipation is not manifesting that thing for you, it is training you by the repetition to keep looking for signs outside of yourself instead of taking action within. And what I mean by that is this is like a training ground of I'm waiting for a signal, I'm waiting for a sign that tells me something's coming rather than any action that I internally need to do. So this is over time training the subconscious to look for those things, right? To be passive. It doesn't mean that signs or synchronicities and magic never happen. It's just really a warning here that what you're doing is a training ground. You're training your brain to start looking on the outside at things instead of looking on the inside at things. And what this does over time is this hijacks the understanding you may have about yourself. You stop asking, what's happening inside of me? And you start asking, what does this mean cosmically? What are the signs that are pointing towards this, that are telling me I'm on the right path? And so they're replacing what could be self-understanding, what could be agency within that would fall from that self-understanding, small actions that you would take, habits. And they're replacing it with just look at the signs, just wait, just sit around. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And self-awareness becomes so distant with that repetition that reflection is just entertainment at that point. And so they're training you to really chase meaning instead of integrate and proactively take steps, which both are needed to be a harmonious, conscious individual. You need both action and you need both anticipation. You can't just live in a state of perpetual anticipation, in a state of something's happening, something's coming, and I'm just waiting. That's not balanced. The second thing a reader will do if they are acting from a place of self-interest and not your interest is, number 2, they feed dopamine withdrawal cycles. This is very important to hear and understand what this looks like. We all know dopamine from our smartphones and everything we're doing on an everyday basis. But in readings, in intuitive spiritual sense, this looks like you're so special. This looks like a narrative where they keep encouraging and influencing your difference from the mass population. When a reader constantly isolates you into specialness, this is a warning to pay very close attention into that. There's a fine line here, however, because as a reader, I know what this looks like from an energy standpoint, is sometimes I am shown isolation to understand the message for you. I'm shown in contrast. So that helps me narrow to the collective I'm channeling for and be able to articulate to you, this is a message for you because of this. So there is isolated factors. It's not wrong to explain how you're different, how you're special, how you're unique, but the harmful part is the dopamine cycle that follows that. And this is what I'm pointing at to be very aware of with these readings. If they are constantly flattering or isolating you from others, it can actually be harmful over time. And I want to say you are special, and I want you to hear that from me. I know damn well that my collective, the audience I channel for, is special, but there's a fine line here that only you can determine, and that's through self-awareness that I'm putting onto you with this dopamine cycle. And let me explain what the dopamine cycle looks like. Is you're told you're special, and that what that does is that creates dopamine. It releases dopamine in your brain, wanting those compliments so badly that they draw you back in to be flattered again. And you might not even recognize you're doing this because it sounds so vain and superficial. You might think, I don't do that. I don't want to be flattered. But a good way to tell if you are being drawn into messages based on the flattery is pay attention to what happens to you when readings don't feed that dopamine loop, when readings don't flatter you. And my question to you is, how would you deal with that if you went into a reading and someone said you weren't special? Your favorite reader said you don't shit butterflies and rainbows. What do you do with that? Would you click away? Would you say, this isn't for me, I don't claim this message? That's what we're talking about here, is the way in which you're feeding dopamine can be shown directly to you through how you handle a message without dopamine. Now, this is tricky because in today's age, you're not going to find a lot of messages online that don't feed that dopamine reward system. Those readings are going to be very hard to come by because the algorithm isn't pushing those kinds of readings. The algorithm is rewarding readings that feed the dopamine cycle. So I suppose a better way to track the dopamine flattery reward system here is how good you feel being told you are special. That could be another way, is really pay attention to the feelings that come from being told you're unique, you're special. It can tell you more honestly if you're being drawn in by flattery, by your uniqueness, by your specialness through that dopamine reward system, or if you're really there for honest truth and messages. Of course, the best way is to find an honest reader and see how you react to that. But if most of your readers are flattering you all of the time, that's something to pay attention to. Number 3 is these readers will rewire for urgency instead of peace when they are acting for self-interest. What this does is this trains you to associate urgency with agency because you're not having agency. The messages keep you passive and waiting, so your agency is the urgency of the message, right? That's what's replaced it. What this looks like is every message will carry some sort of urgent need. Like they'll say, before the portal closes, or hear this now and never again, watch before this date. You'll see this a lot to push algorithm, but it also conditions your nervous system though over time to chase alerts instead of cultivate stillness and be able to sit without input, which is a very important part of healing and conscious ascension. So eventually, over time, scanning for these urgent messages, these downloads, it trains you to feel wrong in the calm or to feel wrong without any input going on. This is feeding the cycle of needing these readers. They want you to be reliant on them. So you'll feel something is off if your inputs are low and it's not feeding you a message with a deadline of some kind. So really, this is just training timing, training urgency. It's very much an advertising technique as well, as they try to get people to buy products quickly. They do the same with messaging. If your messages are looking very urgent, very see this now and never again, that could be a sign that the reader is acting from self-interest. This next section is going to talk about what I want to call grounded readers, readers not acting from self-interest. These are very few and far between. Obviously, not all tarot and intuitive readers are bad. You can't have bad without good. Some of them will be slightly bad with a little bit of good. Some of them will be all bad. This is really up to you to discern, but I'm just presenting how to discern it because it's coming through that a lot of you don't really know. So number one, a grounded reader builds real community. This isn't just a community of spiritual, intuitive people. Think of this as a narrow community. It is people like you that are being channeled instead of the mass appeal. It is a narrow community that operates similar to you in very specific ways. This creates a feeling of being understood or not being alone in some way. When the audience or niche is like specific and narrow individuals, that is a community for you rather than just widespread mass appeal. And so that could look very different, right? Widespread community could be a bunch of people who are no contact with their ex. That's not very specific to you and the specific obstacles you are facing. That is very mass appeal. A specific audience has specific traits that cannot be easily replicated that are very specific to you. These types of readers gather people who experience very specific, nuanced parts of life with you to help encourage you that you are not alone in this journey. It is not just general, we're all spiritual hippies and we all here love each other and we're all warm and welcoming. It is very nuanced. So think of this as a real community means people who have experienced very nuanced things just like me. The second sign of a grounded reader that is not acting from self-interest is they will act as a mirror. What this really looks like in real practice is the reader doesn't give you too much interpretation on their end. They definitely can challenge you and your beliefs in some way, but they leave it open-ended for your interpretation. This looks like not making really just dramatic claims that something will happen, someone is coming back. And that's not because they can't predict that energy, that weather forecast. It's more so leaving the energy for your interpretation for your highest good. Instead of saying they are coming back, a good reader might offer you a way to see your energy in how it's being reflected in that reading. Like, why are you waiting for them to come back? They might be reading the threads that involve this person instead of making direct claims about what will or will not happen, because free will is always a part of that equation. It can always change the weather forecast. So they're not just making false hope claims. A good reader will just, in this way, as they're acting as your mirror, they're offering you to see your energy and giving opportunities to look within by showing you in different ways. And the last way that a reader shows you that they are grounded and not acting from a place of self-interest is they're taking the time to simplify existential questions, complications. This means that they are really looking at the energy, its complications, its nuance, and they are presenting that to you in an understandable way so you can retain that information for your highest good. Basically, what they're doing, instead of just word vomiting that energy back to you and making predictions and accusations, is they're connecting dots for you in a way that they see that you can't understand. Or that you're stuck in. They're connecting those dots to help move you forward in some way. Ultimately, these questions that you have, the answers that they give should direct you back in some way. They shouldn't make, again, crazy dramatic claims that they know what's right. Most of the answers should be guiding you to remember what you've forgotten in this lifetime, or explaining in a way that can help you connect those dots. And a lot of readers will not take the time to look at nuances, will not have a very complicated message. It's usually very, someone's coming, I love you, you're the best, you're so special. It's not really getting into the depth of your energy because complexity doesn't pay. A lot of people don't have the attention span to listen to the nuances, to listen to the connection of dots that will actually help them get unstuck. So this is a good way to tell if a reader is acting in your best interest because they're not motivated by monetization. They're not motivated by feeding the algorithm. They're motivated by feeding you. So ultimately, ungrounded or self-interested readers are a majority of what exists online today. And truly, this could not be intentional. They could very much be acting from a place of unconsciousness. They could see the energy, but not understand the impact they're having with the collective. They might truly believe they are helping you manifest in some way, as where you and others might truly believe that you are manifesting through them. But whether or not they are conscious doesn't matter. What matters is the harmful effect that it has on you, and it's the same. That's why today's message, that's why Spirit's message is so important, because it pushes accountability back on the reader to stop feeding algorithms and to start feeding actual people. But more than this accountability, I think the main focus is on you. We can't ask someone to save us. We can only save ourselves. And that means putting your well-being in the hands of another will almost always inevitably end badly. You must protect yourself instead of expect others to protect you and then get angry when they don't. Something that you really need to know here is that a lot of readers, a lot of online tarot intuitives, they prey off vulnerability, and that comes from low points in the ascension process that are very natural, basically like emotional disturbances or life shifts that are hard and difficult, dark night of the soul, things that make the collective susceptible to false hope, to this dopamine reward system. And their business model, well, whether it is conscious or not, will by default attract the masses. It will attract people who have a high turnover rate because these readers, these intuitives, are casting very wide nets. And those nets have to be wide because that vulnerable state that those people that they're targeting are in is not permanent. It is only a temporary time that these souls are in this ascension process and they're weak and vulnerable and they need help. So eventually those souls wake up, or they discover that this content isn't feeding them like they thought, or it's unhelpful. And so that's where you get maybe where my collective has realized these are not feeding me. They're saying the same thing over and over again. This isn't resonating like it used to. You've gotten to that certain point where their business model is not feeding you as the mass. You are now the targeted small niche audience that real readers will find. So that's why the business model is really like targeted at mass appeal, not specific and niche. And with all of that said, the reason I bring this up is a good reader might have less of a following. I'm not saying that they can't coexist. A good reader could, in fact, have a large audience. They're not mutually exclusive. But these readers who act with self-interest are usually not channeling for specific niche people. They are channeling for mass appeal. And mass appeal usually cannot exist with ethical practices. For example, like billionaires can't get billions ethically. They can't scale to that point without being unethical in some way. And the same concept is true here for readers. Usually a very wide net, if a creator has that, it's showing you that they're appealing to the masses, that they're not channeling for specific people, and they might have to very much be unethical, be feeding an algorithm, not people, in order to do that. So this is a call to really look at these things that I've mentioned and self-reflect on the content that you are consuming. I hope this helps some. I love you guys. Cheers.